I'm very sad for this little girl. And I will say without apology, and this is a big statement. And it's hard to say because I think foster care is so terrible in so many ways, and that it's not even close to an ideal for a child. But this little girl would be better off in foster care until she is 18 years old.
Hello, and welcome to the 12 Days of Tradmas. If you're new around here, my name is Kit, and Tradmas is a series I do in December where I talk about the harmful beliefs and ideas promoted by certain influencers, content creators, and so on. Basically, my normal content, but more of it and with a festive flair. And today, we're watching Allie Beth Stuckey take her hatred and general unpleasantness to new heights in her video, 3 Men and a Baby. Polyamory is infiltrating foster care. What catches my attention about the title is the use of infiltrating, which means enter or gain access to an organization, place, etc. surreptitiously. Hopefully I said that right because I'm not trying again. And gradually, especially in order to acquire secret information. And what does surreptitiously mean? In a way that attempts to avoid notice or attention, secretively. So we're supposed to believe that these 3 men fostered a child without revealing their relationship status, even though they did so on the forms as required, and did a whole TV interview. Yeah, real sneaky there. Good job, guys. Setting aside Allie's misuse of, actually, I think she knows quite well what words mean. She just wants it to sound scary for her audience. So loving. Much Christian. Anyway, TLDR, 3 men in a polyamorous relationship in Quebec, yes, folks, we're not even in the US, and Allie is still upset about it, became qualified for the foster care program, fostered a little girl, and ended up adopting her. This is very distressing to Allie Beth, though I would think she would be glad a child got a loving home, but nope. But before we get to that, Allie Beth has a few other things to say.
I am having Katie Faust speak at Share the Arrows, and she's the best on this. She is the best on pro-child politics and how we center the child and how we structure society and how we pass laws. And she is a champion of the reality that kids are best suited. The ideal situation for every child is to live with their married biological mom and dad.
The only way folks like Allie Beth center children is by insisting only married heterosexual couples can have them, and by using them as a cudgel when they want to moralize about something. Otherwise, they don't care about kids. They just pretend they do when convenient. But they do nothing to protect them, and I would like to note that Allie Beth is just one of the many who was like, oh, no more SNAP? Tough luck. The idea of kids going hungry, not so fun fact, the US has the highest child poverty rate among developed nations, does not move her. But hey, she allows that there might be some exceptions to the idea that kids are best off with their married biological parents, but then she says those exceptions just prove the rule, and thanks to the sexual revolution, we're bringing kids into less than ideal situations. You might be thinking, but isn't Allie Beth against abortion? What does she propose women do in those situations? And yes, but we'll get to that in a moment. First, I need someone to tell me.
And the loosey-goosey regulations of adoption.
Is that true? I've never tried to adopt, but I did get the impression that it was neither easy nor cheap. And one more thing.
But when you have 2 men that buy the eggs from one woman, that rent the womb from another woman, and then force this child away from their biological mom and away from the only body and home they've ever known immediately after birth, place them on their strange hairy chest.
Though this video is about adoption, Allie Beth does take the chance to rant about surrogacy, and I think most of us have reservations about paid surrogacy. However, I would like to note here that men in straight relationships do skin to skin as well. Does Allie think that men just shouldn't do that in general, or is it only in a surrogacy situation that men have a strange hairy chest?
We are no better than the Aztecs. We are no better than any other pagan society that has ever lived. We are still sacrificing children. Whether it's through abortion, whether it's gender ideology, butchering the bodies of children, or whether it's through this, purposely laying them down on the altar of adults' sexual whims. That's what's going on right now, especially in Quebec. I saw this video going around that explains that this polycule of 3 dudes just adopted a little baby girl, and my heart is just broken.
It's a shame she can't keep that same energy for actually abused children. Instead, she uses it to fearmonger about people she doesn't approve of caring for children. Anyway, she shares the interview, and the three men have been waiting to become parents for 7 years, and the day before the interview, they adopt a 3-year-old girl through Quebec's Youth Protection Services. One of the men says that, quote, "We are a little different because we're 3, but we're not different from any other family," end quote. And this is Allie Beth's response.
You actually are, though, because you're 3 dudes, which tells me you have no moral limits. Like, if you're willing to not only defy nature, and you are willing to defy even liberal definitions of marriage, and you live in some kind of inherently unstable polycule situation, then you do not have the correct components to raise a child.
She has done nothing to earn that smugness. Though granted, no one who actually has a right to be smug will act so. But as someone who grew up with those married biological parents Allie Beth lauds, she knows nothing and understands nothing. It's better to grow up in a loving home with however many people that love and care for you than to grow up with 2 people who constantly fight and can barely spare a glance in your direction except to criticize. Conservatives are so focused on what looks right that they completely miss the point.
Even if we take religion out of it, let's just look at this scientifically. 2 men or 2 women who want to be in a relationship have to acknowledge that they do not have the parts that are needed to create a child. And therefore, because biology, not bigotry, has set limitations on your reproductive abilities, then there should be limits and restrictions and regulations around your ability to obtain and raise a child. Because you see all of the hoops that have to be jumped through and all of the moral limitations that have to be placed to the side in order for an inherently unstable relationship like this to procure a child.
Question. Is it procuring a child when straight couples adopt? I see the language she's using here. But please note that these men did things the way Allie says she would prefer. They didn't use IVF or surrogacy, they adopted a child in need of a home. And that's not good enough for her because they're 3 men. Though I would like to note that even if it was 2 men, she still wouldn't approve. Amir Odom, please take note. It is laughable, though, that she says we'll look at this scientifically. There is nothing scientific about what she just said. There are no rules in nature about who can look after kids. If someone wants to step up, they just do, like these men did. Honestly, it seems to me like Allie just views adoption with suspicion in general.
Because biology, not bigotry, has set limitations on your reproductive abilities, then there should be limits and restrictions and regulations around your ability to obtain and raise a child.
So what about infertile straight couples then? Should they also be viewed with suspicion if they wish to adopt?
I'm very sad for this little girl, and I will say without apology, and this is a big statement, and it's hard to say because I think foster care is so terrible in so many ways, and that it's not even close to an ideal for a child. But this little girl would be better off in foster care until she is 18 years old than living with 3 men who are living in a polycule situation. 100%.
Allie Beth Stuckey is not only hateful, she is also an idiot. A cruel idiot, the worst kind. Quote, in relation to peers in the general population, children and youth with experiences in foster care generally have poor educational, economic, housing, health, substance, and criminality outcomes. End quote. Foster care is not preferable to adoption, especially not because Allie Beth thinks.
Because there is no end to the confusion and instability and chaos that a situation like this can cause.
Ma'am, having a relationship end does not cause more instability or chaos than going from one foster home to another or wondering why no one wants to adopt you. Is Allie Beth capable of considering viewpoints besides her own? Moving on, she tells us that Christians are called to judge with righteous judgment and talks about a 2017 article in Glamour about a polyamorous family that received custody of their child. And this just stuck out to me.
And by the way, Christians are called to judge with righteous judgment. We are not called to be hypocrites. And so we shouldn't be condemning someone for something that we are also actively guilty of. And all three co-parented until Dawn and Michael's divorce sparked a custody battle. What? They got a divorce? I am shocked. That just throws me for a loop. I definitely thought that this was an in sickness or in health holy covenant kind of situation here.
So I'm sure we're all shocked to hear this, but Christians also get divorced. What was that about not being called to hypocrisy? Anyway, another thing stood out to me.
God created marriage and the family for a lot of reasons, to reflect the marriage between Christ and the church, but also on a practical level to protect women and children, because women and children are physically weaker. And so we need men to protect us.
So then, why is home the most dangerous place for a woman? Why are so many pastors and higher-ups in churches being arrested for harming women and children? To be clear, I'm not saying that being Christian means you're a bad person, but the knowledge that Christians harm people, that Christians break the law, that should give Allie Beth pause before she decides to rail against other people living their lives. But instead of doing that, she just waxes on about how a strong family unit is the biggest defense against all sorts of societal decay. And again, Allie Beth does not believe in protecting children. She thinks they are their parents' property. If she was actually interested in protecting kids, she would know that sometimes kids need to be protected from their parents. Anyway, then of course she talks about how Satan hates this and
all of this is satanic, and Christians have always been called to speak out against the satanic.
Like the satanic panic in the 80s, which was based on nothing and ruined lives? Honestly, I don't know how people can hear so many things called satanic and still take it seriously. But regardless, people living different lives from yours doesn't make them satanic.
There's really no end to this, because if 3 people can all claim to be a valid parent to a person, then why can't 50?
This is reminding me of when gay marriage was legalized and people were freaking out it was going to lead to bestiality becoming legal. Save your slippery slope argument for, actually, you know what? Don't even bother with it.
And at least when it comes to adoption, there are some restrictions. Like, even though, unfortunately, these 3 men were allowed to adopt this child, they did have to do some things. They supposedly had to prove that, they had some semblance of a stable life.
Supposedly? Allie Beth just went on a rant about how, if 50 men wanted to adopt, could people raise red flags without being called a bigot? But she is a bigot. She doesn't think gay couples or polyamorous families can be stable, even though heterosexual straight couples don't have a great track record for stability either. Humans are messy and complex. And just because a couple doesn't divorce doesn't mean things are stable. Again, conservatives are so concerned about things looking right that they ignore reality. Moving on, Allie goes on another rant about surrogacy, and though I do agree that there are ethical issues about it, I'm not sure what it has to do with this video. At least according to Allie Beth's own rules, this family did the right thing by adopting. Unless, of course, you realize that for non-heterosexual families, there is no right way to create your family according to Allie Beth and her fellows. If you're not straight, if you're not married, you should not have kids at all. Which definitely doesn't sound pro-child to me, but I'm sure Allie Beth sleeps soundly at night. And on that note, Allie Beth has a question for those of us that believe in science.
I was talking to Elisa Childers the other day, and she said something that I hadn't heard before that I thought was a cool way to think about it, which of course we knew. So everyone has their own full digestive system, right? You've got your full circulatory system. We have our neurological system, like it is complete inside our body as a rule, but you only have half of a reproductive system. Everyone only has half of a reproductive system. It doesn't produce anything on its own. It needs the other half. And so God created men and women in this obviously biologically complementary and necessary way to advance the human species. And so those of you who believe in science, don't you think at the very least that science tells us a little something about how society should be set up, how marriages and families should be structured?
No, and I find this question odd because science allows us to do things like prolong lifespans thanks to vaccines and medical interventions, and is Allie Beth going to say that we should only do things the natural way as God designed? Of course not. She's not going to tell someone to forego a blood transfusion or a pacemaker or antibiotics. At least I haven't seen anything from Allie Beth indicating that she's against those things. And she actually has an ad for an antibiotic company in this video, so Yeah, I'm thinking she's fine with medical intervention. And as for the idea that one's biological parents are the preferred parents, how sheltered is she? Or does she just not like the idea of gay people raising kids and will thus pull out all the arguments she can think of against it? Anyway, Allie Beth at least acknowledges that surrogacy and adoption aren't the same thing, but for anyone wondering, per Allie Beth, adoption redeems a broken situation and surrogacy creates one. From here, she goes into studies, and I find it interesting that she's fine with studies that show married two-parent households are best for kids, but she apparently didn't think to look up results for kids that grow up in foster care. She also doesn't pull any studies that show kids growing up in two-parent homes with two mothers or two fathers fare as well as kids that grow up in a home with a mother and a father. Wonder why she doesn't mention that. I'm also very curious if she would allow that poverty can influence outcomes, and that single mothers are most likely to live in poverty. What if the answer wasn't marriage, but money? Just a thought, and we don't like too many of those. So is it just me, or is Allie Beth the worst? Taylor Alicia also sees demons everywhere, but Allie Beth is just so smug, and she has no reason to be. In fact, isn't pride a sin? And that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please like if you enjoyed the video, dislike if you didn't, subscribe if you find yourself enjoying my content in general and aren't yet subscribed, and let me know what you think below. I would like to give extra thanks to my patrons, and my socials, sources, and resources are linked below, and Merry Solstice!